London-based newspaper, The Economist, says Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, is the best choice for Nigeria. In a recent article titled "Nigeria Desperately Needs a New Kind of Leadership," the newspaper said Obi diagnoses the country's failings more precisely than his rivals. It says most striking is that Obi has urged people not to vote along ethnic or religious lines, but to favor competence. The Economist says Nigerians should heed the call and vote competently, that it would make a radical shift in Nigerian politics if this happens. According to the newspaper, Obi's talk of supporting businesses, free trade and getting a grip on Nigeria's mounting debt is what the nation needs, and it diagnoses the country's failings more precisely than his rivals, although he's not much better at explaining how he would fix them.
Joining us now is additional Fagbenro-Byron, the Director of Operations, Obi Dati Campaign Organization.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Now,
Thanks for having me.
when you look at the recommendations of the description from The Economist,
Yes.
The Economist is a well-trusted publication.
Absolutely.
Many of us grew on that publication partly. Anyway, you would say that was a glowing description or glowing recommendation of
the presidential candidate.
Your candidate.
Yes.
But then also they try to balance it by saying it doesn't do much better in explaining how you fix Nigeria's problems. So how do you marry these two contradicting opinions?
Okay, thank you very much for having me again. Well, let's start from the good side. Let's start from the good news in that clearly The Economist is not a paper or a journal that predicates itself on trivia. There's a lot of statistics that go into it. And if you want to discountenance The Economist, see what is happening in Nigeria. Even Nigerians are saying the same thing. What The Economists are saying is just a reflection of what the feeling of Nigerians are, in the sense that Peter Obi has been able to demonstrate and endear the kind of trust that the others have not been able to, that there are others have found it so difficult to endear. So that trust is one thing. The second thing is that it's about the future. It is about the future, not about what you did in the past. It is about promises of the future. It is about the youth. You cannot isolate the youth from the future. You cannot isolate the future from the youth. And it is only Peter Obi that gets that. The rest are residual in their thinking, residual in their attitude to other Nigerians.
What do you mean by that? When you say
well, they rely more on what they've done and what they've done and what they've done and what they've done, and nothing of what they do. Going to the second half of that question, that you see, the implementation process. This is what, when you have a transition, what you have is you set out your manifesto, you set out your targets, which are precise, but the nuts and bolts of how that becomes. Now, it took the Labour Party and Peter Obi about 6 months of hard work to develop that manifesto, and in that process, right, lies there in the implementation platform. But the atmosphere, the campaigns, if you drill us down, you will get your solutions. You take, for example, from consumption to production. I'll give you straight away. There are factors of production: land, labor, capital. There is IT. So how do you move from consumption to production? You start developing each on its framework. You develop education. The education can, the land, add value to it.
We hear you on that. But let's not forget The Economist. Well, they actually wrote a glowing article for your principal, but they fell short of predicting a victory for him.
Yes.
And one would argue that even in 2019, they had predicted a victory for the PDP candidate, Atiku Abubakar, which we all know how that eventually panned out. But one area of that article, which was left in this report that we've just written here, it says he's not much better at explaining how he will fix these issues, especially as it concerns debt. Nigerians are worried that whoever goes in there, 77 trillion.
The truth of the matter, let's be bluntly honest.
Yes,
the truth
let's
of the matter
talk
is
about that quickly.
It is when this government leaves that you will know the kind of rot that Nigerians are really in. And it will be difficult for anybody, even Angel Michael, to predict exactly how. But Peter Obi has character, he has competence, he has capability, and there are those around him, several who are donating themselves, who are lending themselves, that have that capacity. The point is that when you are in government, that this is what comes in is responsiveness. How do you respond? So I mean, you can ask any Nigerian, for crying out loud, who is the most responsive, who is the most spontaneous, who is the most reaching out, who is the most that can connect.
Well,
And that is precisely how you will start.
I like the fact you talked about reaching out, because some would say, yes, we've seen Peter Obi. A lot of those polls would actually say he has a good chance of winning the elections. But some are actually worried, especially how you've been able to make inroads into regions where the North in particular, there are concerns there, especially looking at, let's even cast our mind back to 8 days ago. Yeah. The candidate of your party, the gubernatorial candidate, actually collapsed his structure and, supported the APC candidate, because according to him, it's more of what's happening at the center. There's no focus on the state. So, I ask you directly, the Labour Party, have you been able to really make inroads in northern Nigeria to guarantee
we have made
victory?
Inroads. We have made inroads everywhere poverty has made inroads. We have made inroads everywhere violence has made inroads. We have made inroads everywhere that Nigerians have been victimized. Peter Obi was in Bill. We have made, you see, let the elections come. Which Nigeria is not suffering from this thing when governors are taking the federal government to court and committing treason all over the place.
The elections are upon us. You mentioned the fact that it's when this administration closes down, leaves, that we hang on. If you hang on a minute, that we'll really see the rot, the measure of the rot Nigeria is in. So, don't you think your candidate is over-promising?
It's not a question of over-promising. We are promising on capacity. We are promising on responsiveness. We are promising on deliberate targets that will be measured over time and from time until he finishes his tenure.
What are the key performance indices that you
The key performance indicators are, well, basically for each sector, for each area, there are several key performance indicators. Yeah. But I'll mention four that broadly covers all those. One, good governance, the ability to respond, to have capacity, accountability, and responsiveness. Two, the ability to communicate within and without government with the Nigerian people, because you have to carry people along. Three, you need to coordinate, because it's a multi-stakeholder, operation, where coordination has to be, And the fourth one, monitoring and evaluation. Whatever you don't monitor, you can't manage. As soon as you get off for, as soon as you get off for, so it's governance, communication, coordination, monitoring and evaluation, and we will deliver.
I still want to go back to coordination as we wrap up this conversation, because the statement by Bashir, your candidate, your ex-candidate now in Kano, was very weighty. He says you're focused on your policy, it's about the presidency, not at the grassroots. So are you confident that, yes, with all your movement across Nigeria, ex-candidate, because he's
no, what did you call him?
He's a candidate.
The gubernatorial candidate is asking whether we are focused on the president. What is he?
They are important. You must agree with me. That all candidates under your platform should be carried along.
Amaka, it is absolutely important. But you see, you overstretch this thing carried along. Who is going to carry anybody on anybody's back in Nigeria of today? Well, for me to even carry my own children at my back, is my children carrying me on my back now? So when we say carry along, people should have their own agenda. Peter Obi has his own agenda.
There was a rally in Kano State, and he wasn't part of that rally. Same thing happened in River State as well.
Bashir is a great guy. No, Bashir is a great guy. You see, but look, it's a question of I love you, but I gotta leave you because of my personal interest, because of what will pay me. That's the point. You see, I wish he was with us. I would love him to be in Labour Party, but the bottom line for him is what's going to pay me. And I can't begrudge him for that. The point is this. The Peter Obi movement is a movement itself that crisscrosses states and local governments, that is deeper than singular candidates. The gubernatorial and the House of Representatives cabinet are fantastic. They're very important. But we must go after one momentum. It is one momentum. Nigerians must be focused. If you want to defeat poverty, and all the issues that everybody's talking around, we must be focused, we must be targeted, we must have a leader, and we must be unequivocal about where we are going.
Thank you, Mr. Additional Fagbenro-Byron.
Thank you very much
for joining us
it's a pleasure.
on our Primetime News Night on Newsnight.
Thank you.